What's up, party people, and welcome back to another episode of NYC Foodways, your weekly food and culture discussion from the cultural capital of the world. My name is John, and this week's episode is dedicated to Dr. Angela Davis, the unbent, the unbroken, a towering figure of righteous resistance. What if our culture's obsession with cleanliness and a particular concept of clean was actually responsible for the generation of dirt? What dirty truths do our demands for a veneer of visually polished spaces hide from sight? And are you down to go dumpster diving with me sometime? In 1951, the New Yorker magazine published a piece written by our boy Joseph Mitchell titled The Bottom of the Harbor, which is in part about the Fresh Kills estuary in Staten Island, New York. In it, Mitchell paints a detailed picture of the hyper-localized foraging foodways that were common to the area in those times. Hunting for mushrooms, picking wild greens of all types, and catching mud shrimp out of tide ditches. Apparently, Fresh Kills was a supplier of the sacramental as well. Willow twigs used in the Jewish festival of Sukkot are traditionally harvested from trees that grow beside water, and back then, for generations, most of the willow bunches used by Orthodox synagogues in the city were cut from willows in the Staten Island tide marshes. This region wasn't solely patronized by humans on the hunt for nature's bounty. There is much resident and migratory wildlife in the marshes, Mitchell writes. The most plentiful resident species are pheasants, crows, marsh hawks, black snakes, muskrats, opossums, rabbits, rats, and field mice. Doesn't this all sound so pleasant, so worthy? Doesn't it sound like something priceless? Something that is so obviously valuable so as to be preserved in perpetuity for all to enjoy? Mitchell continues, the marshes are doomed. The city has begun to dump garbage on them. It has already filled in hundreds of acres with garbage. Eventually, it will fill in the whole area, and then the Department of Parks will undoubtedly build some proper parks out there and put in some concrete highways and scatter some concrete benches about. Mitchell was a real one and a prophet too. In 2001, the final load of garbage was dumped at Fresh Kills. 10 years later, the first section of what was rebranded Fresh Kills Park opened to the public. Over a long period of time, the park is not slated to be fully open and operational until 2036, and at enormous expense, New Yorkers will eventually be granted a city-managed, man-made, artificial, vastly weakened, wholly simulated greenwashed version of what Mother Nature provided to us for free until 1948 when the city's powers that be decided that it was a good idea to start where we ate. Literally. Speaking of piles of garbage, who's hungry? Our society's narrow-minded obsession with a particular and false definition of clean food is one of this channel's least favorite aspects of contemporary life. The line between clean and dirty, safe and dangerous, good and expired is as stupid, wasteful, and arbitrary as any of the other top-down binary impositions we dumbly accept as the way things are without pausing for a moment to ask why. Pausing for a moment to ask why, I posit that without the jaw-dropping amount of food waste at every level of production, distribution, and consumption, our economic system would likely grind to a halt. Think about it. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, at least 30% of our food production is wasted, a staggering statistic to consider with the knowledge that over 1 million New Yorkers routinely face food insecurity. If widespread post-grocery store food rescue was implemented, or if our food system was designed differently, this would mean a mass decrease in demand for the production of new commodities. If even half of the unnecessarily wasted food was consumed instead of discarded, or was never produced at all, it would represent a drastic cut in revenue for many sectors of an economic system already proven to be extremely fragile. The false abundance of typically overpackaged, overprocessed products at the grocery store is only the most visible portion of the incredibly wasteful food economy. This overproduction leads to mass amounts of food waste, which is typically precluded from being consumed by this country's bizarre and misinformed obsession with what is believed to be the right rules around clean and dirty when it comes to food. Anyone who has worked in or around a restaurant kitchen can attest to the unfortunate hygiene-related realities of many dining establishments. Health codes and New York City's arbitrary ABC Eats ratings notwithstanding, if your food has been prepared in a restaurant, especially in a fancy restaurant, I can guarantee it has been handled over and over again. There were hands that loaded the raw ingredients into the prep bins, hands that washed and rinsed and chopped, hands that seasoned, cooked, and arranged, hands that garnished, and hands that served. I personally don't consider any of this to be dirty, but I bet many people would consider the place where I get some of my food, often referred to as the trash, to be so. For those of you that haven't had the pleasure in working in the grocery business, let me tell you what we in the industry both prepare and throw out on a daily basis. Untouched, ready-to-eat meals such as pizza, sushi, and boxed lunches. finished cakes and pastries, fresh baked bread, and so much more. Because the American consumer expects, no, demands, that the aforementioned be prepared fresh for his consumption every day, because running out of the above is anathema to freedom, and because there are virtually zero comprehensive food rescue programs in place to counterbalance the throwouts, these high-ticket items which have had an enormous amount of both raw materials and labor hours put into them are disposed of en masse. Yet we are dirty simply because we remove them from a large plastic bag placed on the street. They're the same items your dumb would have paid $15 for just 40 minutes ago when they were on the shelf, okay? Other common supermarket throwouts are packaged goods that are approaching their so-called Best Buy dates, a laughable concept. Or the old stock that must be disposed of not for any reason other than lack of storage space and the arrival of a new shipment. And don't get me started on produce. Okay, fine, I'll get started on produce. This is probably the most aggravating, simply because high-quality produce is so hard to find in poor neighborhoods, because farming links us to the earth, because fruit and vegetables are living, or at least were recently so, and in discarding a bag of 8 oranges because one is moldy is such a you to Mother Earth, not to mention colossally stupid, short-sighted, and straight-up mean. The Roman emperors of yore, likely the most powerful people on the planet, had far more limited access to fresh fruit and vegetables than your average working New Yorker. And yet we take this endless stream of in and out of season produce for granted, demanding picture-perfect items, dirt-free of course, disregarding the fact that sandblasting all of the dirt off of your vegetables will drastically shorten their life, unless of course the produce has been selectively bred to withstand sandblasting and retain its shelf life, in which case it is guaranteed to be bland and flavorless, a perfect metaphor for the hellish changes man has wrought on our connection to the natural world. We then even disrespect this already disrespected end result, this fossil fuel coated, overpackaged commodity by either disposing of it due to overstock or discarding it due to some visual imperfection that has no impact whatsoever on it as a food source. The end result of these stultifying actions around so-called food safety and quality assurance is, sickeningly, more filth. Visitors to our fair city are often struck by the ginormous piles of trash casually strewn in front of nearly every building in town. And here, amongst these ginormous piles of trash, of course, is where those with their third eye open to the realities of the food web find beauty. All of the inequity, all of the unsustainability and environmental destruction, all of the unfairness, the exploitation, the corporate lies, the high prices and lack of access, all of the marketing pitches and branded hogwash, all of the weak paychecks, the power-tripping bosses, the massive hells that comprise our fallen food system, all of it is washed away when we decide to eat clean from these piles. By rescuing food at the point of no return, from the zone normal people would swear up and down was dirty beyond belief, we are cleansing, in a small but meaningful way, our bodies, ourselves, and our city. And I was serious about the offer to take you dumpster diving. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week for another episode of NYC Foodways. Peace.